When we speak of original human experiences, we have in mind not so much their distance in time as rather their foundational significance. The important thing, therefore, is not that these experiences belong to man's prehistory, to his theological prehistory, but that they are always at the root of every human experience. In other words, what JP2 is saying as a philosopher, as an anthropologist, is saying everything that we have has its roots back before sin. That's all he's saying. That is true even though in the unfolding of ordinary human existence, now I want this to seep into every single molecule of your being, because this is really important. We pay little attention to these essential experiences. Indeed, they are so interwoven with the ordinary things of life that we generally do not realize their extraordinary character. Underline that, please. Based on the analyses carried out so far, we have already been able to realize that what we have previously called revelation of the body helps us in some way to discover the extraordinary nature of what is ordinary. We are dealing with the extraordinary. And that's part of this class, to sit there and say, wowzer dowser. Not just wow, but wowzer dowser. The human experience of the body, as we discovered in the biblical text quoted above, is certainly located on the threshold of all later historical experience. In other words, our experience of our own body when we wake up is there, and it stays with us all this way, okay? Nevertheless, this experience also seems to rest on an ontological depth. What does ontological depth mean? What does it mean? It means being depth. Being depth. In other words, ontological means this kind of thing, the aspects of being as being. Nevertheless, this experience also seems to rest on an ontological depth that is so great that man does not perceive it in his own daily life. In other words, we take everything for granted, and we cannot do that. We're called to not do that. But we do. We all do. Okay. Even if at the same time he presupposes it in some way and postulates it as part of the process of the formation of his own image. Okay, now we're going to get back to nakedness, which is really exciting.
Oh, I better do some explanation.
The difference of the form separates Genesis 2:25. 2:25 is what? They were naked but not ashamed. True?
Yes.
What is Genesis 3:7? They woke up and saw that they were naked and were ashamed.
Right.
See, that's the difference. What's the difference between the two? See, that's what, as a philosopher, this is his question. What's the difference? What's going on here? In the first case, they were naked but did not feel ashamed. In the second, they realized that they were naked. Go down here about 6 or 7 lines. A comparative analysis of Genesis 2:25 and Genesis 3 necessarily leads to the conclusion that it is not a question of passing from not knowing to knowing, but of a radical change in the meaning of the original nakedness of the woman before the man and of the man before the woman. Now notice what he's just doing. He's a philosopher. He's saying, oh, it's not just they knew and now they don't. Oh my God, I don't have a fig leaf on. That's not the point. The point is, what was the nakedness? What did that mean in the beginning? That the fact that they had no clothes? No, that wasn't it at all. It was how they looked at each other. They were totally transparent to each other. And they said yes to that. Every single part of their being was transparent. They saw each other in the way that they were actually created in God's image. Actually. And they say, bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. This change emerges from their consciousness as a fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Who told you that you were naked? The greatest rhetorical question in the entire history of the human being. Okay? Who told you were naked? I didn't tell you that. What? Did you go ahead and sin? Did you really? I knew that. You knew that. Now I'm just asking you to fess up. You fess up. This change directly concerns the experience of the meaning of one's own body before the Creator and creatures. We must ask ourselves whether we can in some way reconstruct the original meaning of nakedness, which constitutes the proximate context in Genesis of the doctrine of the unity of the human being as male and female. This seems possible if we take as a point of reference the experience of shame as is clearly presented in the ancient biblical text, namely as a threshold experience. Shame. What is shame? Well, he's going to describe this to you as a philosopher. Not what you think shame is. He's going to describe it as a philosopher. What is shame, and how can one explain its absence in the state of original innocence in the very depth of the mystery of the creation of man as man? Okay, that's the question. In the experience of shame, the human being experiences fear in the face of the second eye. In other words, if I do something stupid and you sit in here and you're seeing that, I'm ashamed because of what? I fear that your identity is looked at my identity and said, whoa, are you kidding? That guy did that? You're kidding me. He couldn't possibly do that. Did he kick a dog? Oh my God. But he loves dogs. How could he kick a dog? How could he kick two dogs? That kind of thing. See? Okay. With shame, the human being manifests instinctively, as it were, the need for the affirmation and acceptance of this I according to its proper value. In other words, when I form a communion prayer, I expect you to come forward with your identity, and I come forward with my identity, and then we create a communion of persons. One can say thus that shame is a complex experience in the sense that while distancing one human being from another, woman from man, as it were, it seeks at the same time their personal approach toward each other, creating a suitable basis and level for such an approach. The words of Genesis 2:25, they did not feel shame, do not express a lack, but on the contrary, they serve to indicate a particular fullness of consciousness and experience. Notice what he just said. They did not feel shame. This is not a lack. This is a positive. See, they're actually seeing the other person the way they were meant to see the other person. That's what he's saying. Above all, the fullness of understanding the meaning of the body connected with the fact that they were naked. Presupposing, therefore, that the experience of shame is a boundary experience, we must ask ourselves, to what fullness of consciousness and experience, and in particular to what fullness of understanding the meaning of the body, does the meaning of original nakedness correspond, about which Genesis 2:25 speaks? To answer this question, one must keep in mind the analytic process conducted so far, which has its basis in the Yahwist passage as a whole. Yahwist is the second account, right? The anthropological account. In this context, man's original solitude is portrayed as the non-identification of his own humanity with the world of the living beings. This non-identification gives way, in consequence of man's creation as male and female, to the happy discovery of his own humanity with the help of the other human being. In other words, I don't know who I am. Even if I'm talking directly to God, I don't know who I am unless I have the other 3/4 of me. In this way, the man recognizes and finds his own humanity with the help of the woman, and vice versa. This act of discovery on the part of both brings about at the same time a perception of the world that occurs directly through the body. The discovery is the direct and visible source of experience that effectively establishes their unity in humanity. For this reason, it is not difficult to understand that nakedness corresponds to that fullness of consciousness of the meaning of the body that comes from the typical perception of the senses. So it's not just naked without clothes, it's naked, it's transparent. That's what it is. One cannot identify the meaning of original nakedness by considering only man's share in the exterior perception of the world. One cannot determine it without going down into man's innermost being. Hello, innermost being. Again, innermost being. That's the whole key. What's in the innermost being of man and woman? That's the deal. In fact, it is by the dimension of human interiority that one must explain and measure the particular fullness of interpersonal communion, thanks to which man and woman were naked but did not feel shame. And what did he just say? Sex is sex, fine, but that's kind of outward. It's the inner thing that's going back and forth that you share that is the real key. And that makes sex better than if it weren't there. Nakedness signifies the original good of the divine vision. Thank you. Again, it's not about clothes at all. It signifies the whole simplicity and fullness of this vision, which shows the pure value of man as male and female, the pure value of the body and of its sex. When he talks about sex, it's either masculinity or femininity. He's not talking about sex. So he's talking about masculinity and femininity. Okay. The situation that is indicated in such a concise and at the same time suggestive way by the original revolution is as expressed in particular by Genesis 2:25 does not contain an inner break and antithesis between what is spiritual and what is sensible. In other words, it's all one embodied thing. We're all one. We're spiritual, psychological, physiological, the whole McGillis. seeing each other reciprocally through the very mystery of creation, as it were, the man and woman see each other still more fully and clearly than through the sense of sight itself, that is, through the eyes of the body. They see and know each other, in fact, with all the peace of the interior gaze. Interior gaze, what's that? Knowing what's inside the other person, and knowing, and you don't see that, do you? But you do see it in a sense, because you have a sense of it, which creates precisely the fullness of the intimacy of persons. If shame carries with it a specific limitation of vision through the eyes of the body, this happens above all because personal intimacy, as it were, is, as it were, troubled and threatened by such a vision, see? So shame comes about because this thing that I have a vision of is being threatened. I threatened it by doing something stupid, or the other person threatened it by doing something stupid, or we both did something stupid, and it threatens that vision that we have of each other. It's a pure, deep vision of who the other person is. The original meaning of nakedness corresponds to the simplicity and fullness of vision in which their understanding of the meaning of the body is born from the very heart, as it were, of their community communion. We call this meaning spousal. Please highlight that. We call this meaning, it's not nuptial. That's the old translation. It's spousal. What does spousal tell us? It's that we are created so we can be a spouse. We don't have to be a spouse. We have the freedom to say no to spousalhood. But that's how we're made. So we know we're a gift. We know we're made to be a gift. Why? Because of our body tells us that. That's why. Not because our little intellect and will is floating around and bouncing off these walls. Oh, I'm a gift. Doesn't happen. You've got to have a body in order to know that. Man and woman constitute, so to speak, two diverse ways of being a body that are proper to human nature in the unity of this image. And the Creator is He who calls to existence from nothing and who establishes the world in existence and man in the world because He is love. As an action of God, creation thus means not only calling from nothing to existence and establishing the world's existence, as well as man's existence in the world, but, according to the first account, it also signifies gift. A fundamental and radical gift, that is, an act of giving in which the gift comes into being precisely from nothing. Remember when I went back, I said this love within the Trinity can stay there, but it doesn't stay there. It creates out of nothing. You've got to be kidding. We have a God that we worship who creates out of nothing. Why? Because He wants to. You exist. Why? Because He wanted you to exist. That's why. Not because He wants worshipers. Please get that straight. Okay? He wants worshipers after He creates you out of love. Then you are for love. So He wants a response. But He wants you there first. Does that make sense? It makes sense, doesn't it? In other words, the Baltimore Catechism says, why did God make you? To know, love, and serve Him in this world and be happy with Him next. We've been through this last time. What was missing? What's missing is the first part, which the Baltimore Catechism never took up. And that is, He doesn't need worshipers. If I came from the Andromeda Galaxy and I said, who's your God? Well, my God. And he creates us to know, love, and serve Him in this world and be happy with Him in the next. I said, well, you mean He needs this kind of thing? He's a God that is a needy God, right? He needs you to kind of pay attention to Him. The truth is, you're created out of love. And that's, again, another JP tour, okay? You were called through existence to love for love, in order to love. That's the only reason you exist. It's not because you're cute and you love puppy dogs and all this stuff. You're going to be a vet and you're going to love all this. That too, okay? But you're created out of love for love, period. You get that, you're getting a lot, okay? Reading the first chapters of Genesis, Article 4, introduces us into the mystery of creation. That is, in the beginning of the world by the will of God, who is omnipotent and love. Consequently, every creature bears within itself the sign of the original and fundamental gift. Hello, 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 hello. That's why we create. That's why we procreate, because we are made in that image. We love to create and procreate. If we're an artist, do we like to create stuff? Of course we do. And we love to see young people get into that, don't we? We want them to create stuff. Yet at the same time, the concept of giving cannot refer to nothing. It cannot refer to nothing. It indicates the one who gives and the one who receives the gift, as well as the relationship established between them. Now, this relation emerges in the creation account at the very moment of the creation of man. In the account of creation of the visible world, giving has meaning only in relation to man. See? In the whole work of creation, it is only about him that one can say a gift has been granted. The visible world has been created for him. This whole universe is for you and me. It's not because God just says, oh man, I gotta create this thing with 7 moons rather than 3 because I think it's cooler looking. He's creating all of this because he loves to create, and he does it for us. Now that's some God. Creation is a gift because man appears in it, who as an image of God is able to understand the very meaning of the gift in the call from nothing to existence. He also is able to respond to the Creator with the language of this understanding. When one interprets the creation account precisely with this language, one can deduce from it that creation constitutes the fundamental and original gift. Man appears in creation as the one who has received the world as a gift. Now, there are 2 foundational sacraments for John Paul II. Do you remember what the 2 foundational sacraments are? What is the old definition of sacrament? I'm not talking about the 7 sacraments here. I'm talking about the foundational sacrament. The old definition is whatever shows the mystery of God, whatever helps us see the mystery of God. That's a sacrament. So what was the very first sacrament?
Creation.
Marriage.
Go backwards.
Creation.
Go backwards. I want to come to because creation itself.
Creation
Yes,
itself.
exactly. And what is the apex of that? Marriage. Yes. So actually, that is why John Paul II, as we will see, says that marriage is a primordial sacrament. It is not something that was instituted by man. We didn't dream it up as though, oh my gosh, it's better to be married monogamously than have a whole bunch of wives because they're always bickering and everything. So why don't we just do a monogamous marriage? Like as we figured it out, see? God figured it out right from the beginning. That's what we're dealing with.